Good morning. Welcome to the Science of Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra, and we are super happy to be back in person. If you're in the local area, if you're in DFW, we'd love to have you here. The snow is melting, the ice is melting. The roads, as you probably have figured out, are passable, but they might not be passable wherever you are, unless, of course, you're in Florida or California. So we just love being together on a Sunday morning talking about the science of mind. We're in the general summary in the science of mind. We're on page 392. And we're going to stop at a paragraph we actually skipped over last week. This is the overarching general summary of the entire book. So he's going back and summarizing all the bits and pieces of the philosophy, which gives us our the framework, gives us the framework of understanding, so we can then know what we're doing when we're applying and practicing. We talked about the oneness, we talked about the one infinite reality, we talked about how life is expressing that one infinite reality. We talked last week and that we are not obviously the only place where self-awareness and the one infinite reality is individualizing itself, but we're the one we know the best and the one that we're most of us are exploring. So now we're going to go on to this idea of conscious mind and subjective mind, or subconscious mind as it's called in psychology, and the difference between the two and how that relates to this philosophy and the practice and of the science of mind. So in the middle paragraph on 391, and remember that we're translating the word mind into consciousness. So it's not just our left brain. It's not just our brain. It's the right, left brain plus the heart and the gut and the embodied experience. It's our awareness, our consciousness in total. Some of which we are conscious of, aware of, and some of which we are not conscious and aware of, right? So this paragraph speaks about that portion of our consciousness that we actually are aware of, that we have the ability to guide and direct. The conscious mind or consciousness of a human being is that part of or unity with the Supreme Spirit, which enables us to be an individual unit separate in identity without becoming separated from the whole Spirit of God, the whole mind or consciousness of God. Without this conscious mind in an individualized state, then the one, God or the Spirit, would have no independent offspring. Now, there's an interesting statement. No independent offspring. Therefore, God or life or the one infinite reality would not be completely expressed. So we're going to stop there for a moment and recognize that it is that ability for us to be conscious and aware. We're calling that our conscious mind as if it were something separate, right? Please remember it's not, but we're calling it that so that we can identify it. It's our ability to be aware, to be conscious of what's going on. And it is that place where we identify as an individual. But we use the word individualized because we're not actually separate from the one. This is the place where the one is expressing individualized. Without this individualized state, then the one, infinite reality, God or Spirit, would have no independent offspring. Ooh, man, there's an interesting word. Independent offspring. Both words super important. So first, the word offspring. So the ancient Hebrew mystics, they spoke about it this way, that we are made in the image and likeness of God. And so what we have tended to do is make God in our image and likeness. Basically a super, 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 super big person, super powerful, super king, super, right? And obviously able to, so super obviously able to create everything. And so basically, and then if you can see through all the pantheons of gods and goddesses how much we have imbued that with our own sensibilities, our own emotions, our own desires, our own impulses. But if you think about an offspring, right, an offspring is actually carrying the DNA of its parent. It's not that the parent is made in the image and likeness of the offspring, but that the offspring grows to be the same as the parent. Just stop and think about that for a minute. If we're made in the image and likeness of one, we grow to realize and recognize, we grow and grow and grow to fully embrace this truth of our being, that we have the DNA of the infinite reality. What might that DNA be? Well, we're going to spend the rest of the general summary talking about it. Life, love, law, creative process, creativity, engaging in the expression of life, the co-creation of life, right? These are the things that are in our DNA. It's the spiritual truth, the spiritual being that we actually are, that is expressing in this human experience. Independent offspring. Why is this word independent so important? Because there is no individualized experience if we can't act out of sync with the impulse of life that flows through us. If we can't, out of sync, right? If we can't choose to do something that's not in alignment with who we came here to be, if we can't make a bad choice or just a different choice, then basically we're not self-aware. We have no freedom to follow our own experience and expression. So this word independent captures the idea that while we are individualized and not separate from, we are, however, independent, bringing forth this experience that we have of free will. So in the science of mind, we do not believe your life is predestined. We do not believe that it is that there's a destiny that you just are gonna have to experience. What we understand, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, is the way the law unfolds. But the reality of our ability to choose is independent, which means that we can make good choices, bad choices. We can make choices that are healthy, unhealthy. We can make choices that are in alignment with life, and we can make choices that cause death and destruction, and that make a mess. Independent offspring. I think that is, otherwise God would not be completely expressed, right? So that also means that there's an infinite number of ways in which the infinite can be individualized. And without you and me, that expression of the infinite would be missing. So therefore, it would not be fully and completely expressed. And then, since we are also infinite beings, we will infinitely unfold and continually expand the infinite, which is an oxymoron or a paradox that we get to kind of sit with and allow it to expand our consciousness. The eternal has placed itself at the center of our being in order that we may function individually. The discovery of this, the greatest truth about a human being, is the greatest discovery of the ages. This reality that the DNA of the creative power and the impulse of life itself is inherent within the truth of our being. And the entire process, or the entire philosophy of science of mind, is simply seeking to articulate that which is already a fact about you and about me. It's not trying to make it so. You don't have to believe it, and it's still so. And it's an opportunity for us to articulate it so that we can begin to consciously engage with it, rather than, as so many of us have spent so much of our lives on autopilot, or just in, sort of automatic gear. The, what shall we say, the pair, the complement to this idea of being conscious of our consciousness, is what psychology is called the subconscious mind. In science of mind, we call it the subjective mind. And so we're skipping the next paragraph because we talked about it last week, and we're going to the very end of 391. Talking about this subconscious reality. And it is the place where we individualize ourselves on this subjective side of life, which is our use of universal law. Here we call it the law of cause and effect. We also call it, it's in here it says the law of karma, which we don't often use. It is the law of the whole, now individualized as a law of the apparent part. So the laws, the universal laws and principles that are at the foundation of the creation process of the macrocosm of the universe, is also at the foundation of our very being. It is individualized within us as well. We don't have to learn about the law to use it. We just have to learn about the law to consciously use it. We don't have to believe in it. It's always working. It's a universal law. We want to begin to recognize how it works and that it is a part of how we operate in the world. The whole point is to become aware and conscious that this is going on and to participate in it. So what do we mean by the law of cause and effect, or the law of karma? This comes from the Hindu tradition and makes its way into the science of mind. It also comes through the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of the philosophers, the Greek philosophers, as well as mental science. And the idea, of course, is that behind every effect, there is a mental or spiritual cause. Plato called it the idea. That behind everything is an idea or an impulse or a movement in consciousness that is then outpictured in reality. And if it's not an idea that we are consciously planting, then it's just an idea that is being projected out of that unconscious part of our reality. And it is our use of the law and that is so critical, and us becoming consciously aware of it. It may produce either freedom or bondage according to the way it is used. Every effect is an outpicturing of a cause. If we're not aware of that, the effects might make more messes, right? Might keep us limited, might keep us bound in old circumstances. But it's the same law that we use to free ourselves. There's this section here. It's always so interesting that in the science of mind, there's a deep recognition that it may appear, our use of the law may appear as though we are somehow separated individuals and that we have our own storehouse of all those false beliefs. But we're still using a universal law that is not in any way separated out. All right. So this relationship of universal subjectivity of the subjective mind and the conscious mind, or if we're translating the word mind into consciousness, the recognition that there is consciousness of which we are conscious. It's a hell of a statement, right? There's consciousness of which we are conscious. Things going on in our minds, right? That we're directing and we're thinking or we're feeling or we're imagining or we're doing all that embodied work with and we're present to it. Or there's a whole boatload of stuff that we are not conscious of. But we use the term subjective because it's not asleep. It's not present, and it's not working. And so in the science of mind, we don't use the words unconscious or subconscious because both of them tend to imply unaware or asleep. And the law is never asleep. It's always paying attention. And it's always active. It's always producing the effect of whatever's being held in our consciousness, both consciously and subjectively, unconsciously. All those words that we have just tried to define, which I'm not going to keep defining. And why is it so important? Why are the words so important? The words are so important because we have to try to understand what we're talking about. Sloppy language produces sloppy results. Sloppy language produces a sloppy understanding of our relationship and the truth of who we are. And we don't necessarily always recognize that we've simply taken old ideas and slapped new language on them. And so we press upon the language because in the science of mind, we understand the power of the word, which simply symbolizes the power of the idea or the understanding or the sense or the feeling that we have. We use the word to give it shape and definition. And that shape and definition is the seed that is the cause that the law uses to produce the effect. So we spend a lot of time really trying to break down, to deconstruct the old ideas and really ask ourselves, what do we mean by these things? Do we really have a grasp of it? Not a total, complete, I now understand the universe and I can hold the infinity. No, but of course, just like we can understand that there is an infinite number line. We can understand that as a reality. There's an infinite number line, even if we can't grasp its entire infinity. So, conscious and subjective consciousness, conscious mind, the conscious part of us, being that part where the universe is being individualized, and the subjective part of us, the place where the individualized universe is creating at the level of the individual. Ooh, what a mouthful. What a mouthful. Why do we care, right? You're like, okay, it's early on a Sunday morning. Why do we care about this? Let's see. What do you think? Why do we care about this? Why do we have these conversations? So we're going to stop there. We have some lovely folks in the room. We have some lovely folks out online. So I'm going to turn to Ryan and say good morning, Ryan, and good morning to everybody out there. And let's get the party started.
Let's get this party started, right? So welcome, everybody. My name's Ryan. I'm the guy behind the scenes here. You hear my lovely voice, but you can't see my lovely face. And for everybody in the room, hello, I am handsome in real life, right? And I'm here with the iconic Richard, who is going to be helping us today. So, Richard, if you could use this microphone and help the people on this side of the room, and I'll help the people on this side of the room. And you're going to help me help the people on this side of the room. All right, great. So we have a lot of folks that are online with us via Zoom and also on Facebook. So welcome to everybody around the world and where you're watching us from today. Thank you for joining us. So this is an interactive discussion, and we want to hear from you. So those who are in the room, just wave your hand in the air like you just don't care. and either me or Richard will come over and hand you the microphone. That way people online can hear your questions as well as participate. And for those who are joining us in the Zoom room, you can hit the raise your hand icon and I'll pull you into the room. Or for both those in the Zoom and on Facebook, feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat, and I will bring those into the room as well. And I do always want to mention that those who put their questions and comments in the chat, I do keep anonymous. That way we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. So I have a friend on Zoom, Bobby, right?
Yes. Hi, Bobby.
Bobby, I'm going to shout you out because Bobby always gives me great quotes and great information, so I just want to read this, and then we could poll the room to see if anybody has something to share. She says, "Why do we care?" Right? Is the question. Carl Jung said, "Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate."
Mic drop. There you go.
Mic drop. And we're done. Thank you guys for joining us today. Have fun. Be safe.
Right. I love that. The other quote that I really, really, really love from Carl Jung that I think is the other partial answer to why, in it absolutely building on what Bobby shared, and that is that psychoanalysis will only take us so far. It is when we make the spiritual turn that true healing occurs. And that spiritual turn is our deeper awareness and understanding that we are part of a larger life, and that this process of making the unconscious conscious is part of learning that we are, in fact, co-creating. And so he was a man way ahead of his time. It was fabulous, fabulous. All right, I saw a hand back here, so Richard's going to come over here and give you the microphone. Please say your name, and then we'll chat.
Good morning. This is Julia, and actually, they answered my question from what Bobby shared with us about the subjective mind, and my question was, well, how do you deal with that if they're unknown thoughts that go out, and then you're in the mud of it, and it's like, where did that come from? And I mean, that was a great comment. So thank you.
Good. Yay! Thanks, Julia. And of course, that's another reason why we care. We care because we find ourselves in the mud, and we'd like to get out. And we want to know how to get out, right? And one of the ways that we can get out is that we begin to recognize that if this is an effect, it's real. Science of Mind does not say this is an illusion. It's real, but it's an effect. And it only has a causal power if we don't understand that the cause is actually starting somewhere else, further back in the causal chain. And so and of course, they are by definition hidden. Hidden beliefs, right, are by definition hidden because we're not in the moment necessarily conscious of it. So there's a number of ways that we can recognize what they are. One, we can look at our life. Not always something that we want to do, right? It starts with we look at our life and we say, wow, I'm responsible for a lot of this. Now, I'm not responsible for the hurricane, and I'm not responsible for institutional racism, and but much of my life, 70, 80% of my life, I am in fact responsible for. And of course, I'm responsible for how I deal with those other things that I'm not responsible for, which ultimately makes me 100% responsible, right? And so I have to look at my life and what's in it. And most importantly, this is what I've found, is not the one-offs, because there's always exceptions. Somebody will always raise their hand in class and say, well, what about this? And so there's always exceptions. But it's looking at the patterns, the patterns that repeat in our lives, that we recognize the same kinds of issues in relationship, the same kinds of experiences with our finances, the same kinds of patterns of I feel spiritually lifted and then I'm in depression, right? All of these things begin to show us that there's something going on within us that is bringing that to us over and over and over again. Two, the other really good way about just learning about what our hidden beliefs are, and this is the other reason why words are so important, is pay attention to how you talk about things. How you talk about things, how you describe your life, how you express your reactions to things. All of these things are coming, if we're not being very intentional and deliberate about it, they're all coming from a hidden way of looking at life, thinking about life, and understanding life, which is what a hidden belief is. And so that can be revealed to us if we're willing to pay attention. Now, what I notice that I do, and I've seen a lot of people do, is that when that gets called out, what we say is, well, I didn't mean that. That's not what I meant. But that is what we said. And it is actually the words we chose, usually unconsciously, usually just kind of in the moment, right? And if we are willing to be open, no shame, no blame. We all do it. We all have hidden beliefs, right? But to just look at it and go, wow, what is that revealing? We can begin to access those things. Of course, there's lots of other ways to do that. You can go into therapy. We can do journaling. We can meditate. We can invite a hidden belief to begin to reveal itself. There's lots and lots of tools that we can use. What we have to do is recognize that they're there and not pretend that they're not there, right? The minute that we recognize it, we can begin to unearth them and let them reveal themselves to us. So, great question. All right, Ryan, I'm going to turn to you and see, have we got anything else going on out there?
Anybody here in the room like to ask a question?
Or make a comment.
And
again, the question I posed, but you're welcome to share with anything, is why do we care about this conversation about conscious and subjective mind? And we do have a comment up here if you don't have one online.
Yeah, let's go here into the room.
I'm Willie. You said something interesting. You said we blurt these things out in the moment. But the reality is we're not in the moment when we do that because we're not paying attention. We're really in the past, in our old beliefs, in our old thoughts, in our old actions. So we're not really in the moment.
Well, that certainly is one way of looking at it. We're certainly not conscious of the moment that we're in by any means. That is completely true. We are not present to the moment, and so we're not making a deliberate decision about what we're saying. Exactly. We're not being intentional, and then bam, there it comes, and we're like, oh, that was interesting, right? Good. And I love what you said. It really does illuminate the past. Yes. Yes and no. It illuminates things we currently actually think and believe that are living color in our subjective mind. They are fully present right now. They're built on the past. They're based on experiences and the ways in which we've decided to understand what's happened in the past or that we've learned. But ultimately, they are running right now in the present. And the other thing that's really interesting to think about is that whatever we look at in our lives, that is, and we want to say, well, how do we know what our hidden beliefs are? What's happening in our lives is another way of accessing the past. Because cause and effect, first of all, it's not like a linear billiard ball kind of cause and effect. There can be a whole spider web and octopus number of causes that are shaping these effects. So we don't want to so simplistically take it up. But the idea that I forgot. I lost my train of thought. I got all excited about my spider web. Oh, I know what it was. The idea that what we're actually experiencing right now is a reflection of our own personal past thoughts and feelings that we've embraced somewhere along the line that have taken the time to be outpictured, which is why we can do deep conscious work to change them, and we're still having some of those experiences because the new causes that we're putting in motion also take some time to outpicture. And so what we want to do is to really focus on the causes that we're setting in motion consciously today, knowing that they must inevitably come out in the effect of our lives in the near future, in the maybe not so near future, right? But whatever we're experiencing right now is a window into what we have been thinking, feeling, believing, understanding, and recreating over and over in our lives. All right, good. Thanks, Willie. Ryan, and then we have Sheila back there.
All right, so we're going to go to the Zoom room now, and I'm going to ask Connie to join the conversation. Connie, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself?
Good morning, Connie.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is amazing, this conversation. They're all amazing. Yesterday, I had a major adventure. And if I were to rely on my past way, it would be, oh boy, I sure flubbed up. And I would pummel myself, no kidding, call myself stupid and all kinds of stuff like that. And I'll tell you just briefly what it was. I was walking outside on a trail that was mixed, a little bit of ice some places and not, and all of that. It was off and on with the ice. And I was walking very carefully, and I could walk over to the side if I wanted to, where there was grass and not ice. But happened that I fell down. And I was out there all alone, and I fell down on my butt. And
So sorry.
You know, and that's not the worst of it. I was able to get up, and I'm okay. You know, I'll see my chiropractor on Monday and get realigned if I need to. I mean, I will get it aligned, but I'm not in any pain or anything like that. But what happened was the keys flew out of my jacket pocket onto the ground. My car key, my house key, they were all on a loop. And I didn't see it. I didn't look back. I walked home, and then I noticed, oh, I don't have my keys. What am I going to do? Where are they, for goodness sake? So I went to a neighbor's house, and I really didn't think that they were out there on the trail at all. I didn't know where in the world they were. And I thought maybe I took a couple of bags of recycling to the car before I went out. Maybe I dropped them in the bag. Who knows? I was trying to think of possibilities. But anyway, my friend, my neighbor that I went to her place, started calling the apartment complex to see if the maintenance guy could come over because it was closed and all that. And then I said, oh, I know what happened. When I fell down, the impact of that flew the keys out of my pocket. So I went back on the trail. And I didn't go the way I usually go. I went the other way because it was in that place where I fell. And they were there, sitting there on the trail. I was so happy. I kissed my keys. I've never kissed my keys. So happy to see them. I walked back, and again, gratitude, appreciation, for my marvelous home here, warm and cozy and all that. And I wasn't going to have to find a place to stay overnight and all this. But anyway, I called my neighbor and told her. She said, great, and later we texted some details. But the main thing for me was being good and kind to myself in the middle of all this. Now, I can choose differently. I'm not going to go out today until later and take a walk later and be much, 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 much more careful. But be good to myself.
Yes. Beautiful, Connie. Good for you. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And it really does show us that we can change these sort of unconscious patterns and responses, because that's all they are, is habit. If we're habitually beating ourselves up, we can teach ourselves, no, that's not how I want to be with myself. And I'm going to start being kind and compassionate. I mean, these kinds of things happen and they fell out. And so now I went back and got them. It just is what it is, and we don't have to judge ourselves. And how lovely for you to have really been able to move into that place. And of course, it takes some time to rewrite those patterns, but that's really great. Thanks for sharing that. All right, we're going to go to the back of the room.
Good morning, everybody. This is Sheila. In my Sangha circle this week, my request for treatment was actually a Gandhi quote, which is right along the lines of what we're talking about, which I love, love, love. And it says, what I think, what I say, and what I do are in harmony. Boy, that's a big one. But also, in follow-up to what you were saying, I look at our lives, our subjective mind. I liken it to the gardening process. And it's all about cultivating the soil. And if you don't attend it regularly, the weeds will come and they will grow and they will multiply. Now, I know that a weed is only that which I did not plant. However, they still show up. But fertilizer, tending with my loving hands, the sunlight, if we don't cultivate what's in our mind, in our mouth, the weeds will show up.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sheila. And to go back and to weed them out and to say, wait, I'm not going to say that anymore. I'm not going to speak to myself that way anymore. I'm going to really try to weed those weeds out, try to pull them up. Is a really intentional act that we can do. And it's a great metaphor to think about. And if we want to stretch the metaphor even further, we have all a plot of land that has been preceded. Some of it's been preceded with love and truth and joy and the truth of who we are. And some of it's been preceded with the culture that we grew up in, the family we grew up in, the things that we kind of absorbed by osmosis about life and about whether it's good or bad, hard or easy, all of those things. It's like it's preceded, because that's the consciousness in which we share in humanity and then in our nations and in our cultures, as I said, and in our families. And so it's not even, the weeds don't even necessarily blow in. Those seeds are there. And what we get to do is we get to decide which seeds we actually are going to allow to grow. And when we notice them coming up, right, we look at our life, we listen to the words that are coming out of our mouth, we can go, oh, wait, that's not a plant I want in my garden. And I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to stop giving it attention or fertilizer. I'm going to work to pull it out. And we see it by looking, and I mean looking in a very metaphorical way, right? Looking and listening and paying attention to how our lives are showing up. And then we can, it's just really amazing. Sometimes for me, I will admit that sometimes it takes a while for me to like really look in the mirror and go, wow, you've really been telling that story for a long time. Wow. And often that story feels so true and so natural that I don't even realize that it's a story that I keep recreating over and over and over again. I keep recreating the experience. And so then I get to have the emotional response. I get to have the observation of it. And I get to say, see there, look, it's really that, there it is again. And it reinforces the old belief. It reinforces that pattern that I'm not aware of until I can begin to see or hear or sense this reoccurring thing. And I'm sorry to admit that sometimes that takes me years, if not decades, to become aware of, right? And so we're always going a little deeper, where the obvious ones we work on, and then we work on the next obvious ones, and then we start getting down to some of those really deep seeds that were deeply planted before we even knew it. And we can then begin to work with. All right, Ryan, I'm going to turn to you.
All right, so I'm going to ask this question, and then we have another person in the room who's going to speak. So now we're going to talk about love.
Love.
Right? So the question comes in, how would you go about grief loss of a cherished family relationship?
Say that again.
How would you go about dealing with the grief or loss of a cherished relationship? This is for a person who is still alive, but due to certain circumstances, I need to let go of this relationship. I worry that this person will spiral once I end the relationship with them. How do I start the process of healing spiritually?
Oh, what a great question. Two separate answers. The first is, how do I deal with the grief of the loss of it? You don't deal with grief. You grieve. You have to feel it. It's sad. It's disappointing. It's painful. And that's all there is to do. Grief doesn't require processing. Grief only requires processing if we don't handle our grief and we keep having more and more grief, and we find that our grief is just coloring everything. But to actually do grief and to deal with grief, the only thing to do is feel it. And we hate that because it feels yucky, feels awful. But it is yucky and awful to feel as though you no longer are able to be in this cherished relationship. Seeking to avoid the feelings or to spiritually magic them away only makes it worse. So we just have to feel the feelings and feel the grief of it. Now, the second piece, I worry that they will spiral out of control, it's an interesting thing to listen to us say that, right? When we're listening to ourselves say that, what we're saying is we don't actually believe in the power of the essential truth of that other person. We're saying they're not capable of handling their own lives. We're saying that we believe them to be separate from the one infinite reality, and that without us, they can't make it. And that really diminishes the person that we're letting go of. And to really trust, really, really recognize that every person is an individualized expression of life. And their life is their business. And their life is theirs to live. And their life is theirs to grow. And that is a really empowering stance, to keep recognizing that even though you may have extricated yourself from a relationship, that you may have determined that this is something that you are no longer able to participate in, to hold that person in your mind as and see the outcome for their life as the truth of their being. They are one with the infinite life. They can't get outside of God. The universal laws are working in their life. And they have as much ability to awaken to that and to co-create as any other human being. And sometimes our worry and our unwillingness to let go really means that they're never faced with that awakening. And so it's an interesting thing to recognize how much our worry and our care for others can actually be holding them in our minds as incapable, broken, or something that's going to spiral out of control. So you can release somebody with love. You can feel your grief and keep holding them as the independent offspring of the Infinite One. All right. Last comment. Thank you so much. Last comment before we head out.
My name is Leah, and I had a question about sort of where I end and you begin, the influence that I have on you, you have on me, and how we lift ourselves out of some of the muck of race consciousness. You know, I don't think you're here because you're an outpicturing of me. Like, you know, you are not having your life experience because it is in my mind. You get to be you, I get to be me, and obviously we influence each other, you know, but it's sort of this idea, well, yes, there's chaos in my life. Does it mean it's because I am projecting chaos onto my life? Or, you know, like a family member, for instance. Or, you know, like I got one of my core beliefs that I've had for years is that, and this is since childhood, I'm the luckiest person in the world. And obviously there's no luck in New Thought, but I translate that. I know what I mean.
Absolutely. I do my St. Anthony prayer for the same reason.
But like I got hit by an 18-wheeler in December and going 65 miles an hour on LBJ, and it only did cosmetic damage to my car. That's wild, right? And it just pushed me sideways down LBJ. The 80,000-pound truck stopped, and I just thought, you know, in my head, the first thing I thought was, I'm the luckiest person in the world. And then I thought, well, did I bring that truck into my life? You know, so it's that where do I end and you begin, and what am I responsible for? And I guess I'm not sure how clear my question is, but okay, thanks.
Absolutely. Yes, it's always lovely to have these conversations as if we were little solo people, just like it was just us and the macrocosm and then creation. But all of you are here too, right? And so if we all have free will, so this is really important in the science of mind. We do not believe that you are figments of my imagination. I did not draw you here so I could have an experience or learn a lesson, right? You actually have efficacy of your own. You have your own essential self. There is, in fact, an essential outer reality that we are experiencing. And that's a whole nother philosophical conversation. And okay, we're not going down any of those trains. Just stop. So Leah, the way that I have really come to understand this is that, of course, whenever there are two or more gathered, we're creating a shared experience. And sometimes I'm playing a bit part in your movie, right? Sometimes I am showing up as the lovely clerk that you needed to have in the moment because you were kind of down, but you're a lucky person. So you always get somebody who's really going to be helpful when you most need them, right? So I might not always be that nice, but in that moment, right, I'm playing that 10% bit part in your movie. On the other hand, I might be playing 90% of the movie. The movie might be 90% of my creation, and you're the bit players, right? And sometimes it's 50-50. And this is where our spiritual maturity comes in. I will tell you that my first, I don't know how many years doing this work, I just knew that if y'all could clean up your consciousness, my life would be better, right? So could y'all get your stuff together and I'd be good? Okay, well, then I realized that wasn't it. So then it was like, well, I'm 100% responsible. I'm 100% responsible. So then I took responsibility for everything and everybody, and I continually beat myself up. I continually took responsibility for absolutely everything. There is a place for radical responsibility, but part of the radical responsibility is actually also allowing you to be responsible for your part. And that takes tremendous maturity, right? To not project, but to also say, wait, that which is going on right now, I'm not feeling that. I'm not having that experience. So that must be something that's yours, and I happen to be the movie screen on which you are playing it out. or we're in the shared experience together, which is what a lot of relationships do, right? I believe in being abandoned. I experienced abandonment in my life. And you're an emotionally unavailable person. So you continually abandon me, and I continually reject you so that I won't be abandoned. And so then, right? And you see, then now we're both playing in the same movie, and we're co-creating that until somebody wakes up and says, wait, I don't want to live my life from the fear of being abandoned. Or I'm going to stop being emotionally unavailable. I'm really going to work to be emotionally available. And so it's a great question. There's no like right answer. There's no easy answer. It's the out picturing, right? And sometimes the cause isn't a lesson, right? You and that 18-wheeler occupied the same space at the same time. And what's up for us is what do I experience in that moment? Oh my God, I'm the luckiest person in the world. Once again, here I am, the luckiest person in the world. We don't know what was going on for that guy, right? And so it's really important to be able to allow things to simply be what they are. And then ask ourselves, where do I go from here? How do I take this up? What am I going to learn or grow or just practice in this particular moment? So it's a great question. Thank you. All right, we're going to carry on with our summary. As you can see, every paragraph is super dense. Gives us lots to talk about because we're summarizing 390 pages of philosophy and practice. So read ahead. We'll see you in the celebration in 30 minutes. We have some very special things going on there, including an honoring of a very, very beloved member of our community. So we invite you to be at the celebration. We'll see you on Wednesday night, or we will see you next week. Bye for now.